I failed to find the correlation between the prices that they charge for cabins and what you get for it. Now, would I sail on Cunard again? Ahoy, it's Alicia. The channel is Time to Travel. Welcome back, and welcome back to me from my 7 nights on board Cunard Queen Elizabeth. It was a lovely sailing from Sydney, Australia, down to Port Arthur and Hobart in Tasmania with an overnight there before sailing full steam back to Sydney. If you've never sailed into Sydney Harbour, it is one of the most spectacular sights you will see. You scoot on through the heads, and then you have the Sydney Opera House on your port side, and then dead ahead you have the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and then as you pull in, if you're pulling in bow first, you've got the whole Sydney city skyline right in front of you. It truly is magical, and I always love doing it. We had an embarkation time of 2:15, and the plan was to just stroll on down to the port, have a late checkout from the hotel, and be there to drop our bags at around about 12:15. Now, once we did that, the plan was to go and just hang out in Sydney for a couple of hours, get a coffee somewhere, but the port agent said we can go straight on board. There was no line, and I did tell her that we weren't due to get on board for another 2 hours, but she said, no worries, just head on straight through. So from the time that we actually dropped our bags, went in upstairs, did our check-in, through security, and then on board the ship, it was no more than 15 minutes. Probably one of the quickest embarkations I think I've ever had. Now, I'm not sure why that is. It was a full sailing, so whether maybe Cunard passengers really do stick to their assigned embarkation times, I don't know, but we managed to be straight on at 12:15. Now, when you do your online check-in, you can upload a photo there, though when you are at the port, they're going to take a photo anyway. So if you have any trouble doing it, I wouldn't even bother, because it's just a waste of time if they're going to take a photo of you anyway. So we go straight on board. Security was super easy. If you are in a premium cabin though, there is no premium lane for security, just so you know. You need to line up with everybody else. It's just the way it is at Sydney Port. On embarking the ship, all the staff were there in their red little porter outfits. They were very cute, and we just went straight to our cabin, which was ready and cleaned for us. We dropped our bags and then decided to go exploring. Because this is our first time on board Cunard, and it never really comes through Australia permanently. It doesn't have, a permanent season that it does here. Each year it does scoot through for a few sailings and then continues on its merry way around the world. So we thought that we'd give it a try, and predominantly because we wanted to sail this week, but it was very last minute that we booked, and everything else that we actually wanted to book, the prices had gone through the roof. There were only suites available on Celebrity Edge and Ovation of the Seas, and those were running at like $20,000. So was not interested in paying that price, and the Cunard cruise ended up being a really good deal compared to those. So I was quite curious to see. Cunard is marketed as a luxury cruise line, and they talk about their white glove service. And I guess in thinking about that, I could never really understand how you could offer a luxury product on board such a large ship. At maximum capacity, it's almost 2,100 people on board, and there's about 910 crew. So the crew to passenger ratio just wasn't adding up to me, nor was the size of the ship in being able to offer a luxury product and control the quality of that product. So I was curious to see what was on board and, really what gave it that Cunard difference. Now, the ship itself was built in 2010, so it's 14 years old, and it's done in kind of like an art deco style, paying homage to, obviously the older world sailing. It does have a lot of memorabilia because the company itself, or the brand itself, it is owned by Carnival Corporation. The brand is 180 years old. So it does have a lot of cabinetry with like all the old photos and souvenirs and trinkets and history of the time. Books from back then, logs from back then. So it's really cool to see I guess the golden age of cruising, maybe they call it. But the ship itself I mean, it was clean. It certainly wasn't luxuriously decorated. It was probably more on par with, say, a princess ship, but it had a lot less children on board. So that was a plus. I don't particularly like cruising with children. I don't have them. I enjoy being on adult cruise lines. You know, as you guys know, if you watch the channel, you see all of the Virgin Voyages, things like Oceania, Azamara. So cruise lines that are more targeted towards adults and really don't cater for children. The cabin itself was just like any other cruise ship cabin. It didn't have anything additional that, if you were looking at two cabins side by side, you wouldn't say that's a luxury brand and that's a regular brand. It was basically stock standard. It did have a kettle in the room, but there are a few cruise lines and a few ships that do have kettles. For example, if you look at Ovation and Quantum of the Seas with Royal Caribbean, they do have kettles in the room because those two generally sail Asia and they love their hot tea. Both swimming pools were open. It has 4 jacuzzis, they were open. Though the pool in the center area, so there are 2 pools, the pool in the center area, there is a bar in that section, but that bar has been not completely removed, but it doesn't function as a bar anymore. So there's no bottles. It's actually used as a towel station. So if you are lounging out by the pool and it was beautiful weather, you have to put clothes on, go into the garden bar to get drinks, because the drink service was virtually non-existent. Reason being that I think there are only 3 times that we were approached across a 7-day cruise in public areas for a drink. And that is actually us sitting there not engaging in eye contact or waving a server over. So when you sat down, they really weren't watching the room and they didn't come over and offer you a drink. That's kind of a lost opportunity for revenue, right? Because not everybody has a drink package. I mean, we didn't have a drink package because, you know, I only drink maybe 1 drink a day with dinner. But then, you know, may have a soft drink or a coffee throughout the day, but certainly nothing that would justify purchasing a drink package. So yeah, it was just like lackluster drink service. The small things that really weren't luxury, they do use measurers to pour wines, and frequently, as I was sitting at the bar during trivia, I saw the barman not wash that out, so use it for 1 wine, tip it into the glass, and then just leave it on the counter and then grab it for the next wine, a different wine, and pour that into the glass. So, but yeah, just mixing wines, I mean, just not a thing on a luxury cruise line. If you do enjoy our videos, please make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. It means so much. It tells YouTube that you want to see more of our stuff. It's no secret that I love food and I love good food, so I was really excited to try out the Britannia restaurant, which was the main dining room for my level of cabin. And I looked at the menu each night and it didn't wow me. Like it wasn't exciting. I didn't often see a beef product offered on it. It was usually lamb, chicken, or seafood like fish or prawns, but I really didn't see beef on there. So then maybe I thought, oh, maybe it's like other cruise lines that have like that is the menu of the day, and then you have the staple menu items that you can get every day. So, you know, there's always your escargot and there's always a steak or something like that. But there really wasn't. The menu was the menu. So it was nice. We had, the first night we went in, we had the most incredible waitress. Her name was Judy. Thank you. She was so great. We had the most beautiful window at the back of the ship, and that was a really lovely experience. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The second time that we came back though, we were seated in a different area and a different level of the Britannia restaurant, and the service couldn't have been more different. I don't think our waitress made eye contact with us at all. It was like head down doing the job. It really wasn't a good experience. We did have a lovely meal in the steakhouse at the veranda. It was really beautiful. The staff were so attentive and very engaged. The cafe was another area where the service was hit or miss. It was probably miss more than it was hit. A lot of the time we would need to go up to the counter and ask them to send a waiter to us, even though when we came in we would make sure that we engaged in eye contact with the waiter or gave a friendly hi so they would see us. Maybe it didn't register that we were coming in, and we were often sitting there for a long time, sometimes 15 minutes before we were actually served. And we were just there for a coffee and cake, but it was really hard to get service in that area. Our coffees came, and look, this is just what they do, and it's a nice touch, but the touch kind of missed the mark. They bring out your coffee on a silver tray, and you have a little biscotti there, you have a glass of water, and you have your coffee. Now, when your tray's coming out and it has water stains on it, that's not luxury. So if you're going to do that kind of thing, just make sure that the trays are clean before they come out. And even the glassware, it obviously wasn't polished before they put water in it. And look, it sounds like I'm being a princess about these things, but if it's a luxury brand and it charges a much higher premium to sail on it, then these are the kind of minimum things that you would expect. They did have complimentary cakes there though with your coffee, and that was really nice. Though one day I was going to get coffee and cake in bed, but they wouldn't let you take the cake out of the venue. Something about food safety. Although it was completely fine to take food out of the buffet and bring it to your room, just not a cake from the cafe to bring to your room. And by the way, they don't have paper cups for takeaway. They will actually just give you a regular cup. On Disembarkation Day, we decided we would go to the main dining, so Britannia restaurant, and we actually booked our table. So the night before we booked it for 7 a.m. We rolled on in, we got coffee, they offered a pastry, we ordered our mains, but after 30 minutes they came to us and said it shouldn't be long, there's a problem in the kitchen, and then another 10 minutes later I saw my food come out, and then they looked at it and then they went back and they said it's wrong. So we were actually there for 55 minutes and we didn't get any breakfast and we had to leave. Now mine was just an omelette and his was just a toasted cream cheese bagel. So it wasn't particularly difficult. They were both items that were offered on the menu. So they weren't a special order with any special dietary requirements. It just took forever, and 55 minutes is a little long to be expected to wait for your breakfast, especially on Disembarkation Day when you've got flights to catch. So we had to leave and have no breakfast. So on board of the food we ate, it was acceptable. There was nothing outstanding. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't premium. Some dishes, particularly main dining, were quite bland. It just wasn't up to scratch. It could have been on any cruise line anywhere. It wasn't anything particularly amazing. Like, it was just your standard cruise fare on a regular cruise line. And one of the things that people talk about on board is that there is very much a class system on board Cunard, and I actually didn't find it to be the case. It was really no different than if you're on Celebrity and you're staying in a suite. You have access to the retreat and you also have access to Lumino restaurant, that is the suite restaurant. If you are in an aqua class cabin on Celebrity, you have access to Blue restaurant, and that is just for you guys. And then if you're in a regular cabin, then you eat everywhere else. So it's no different to staying in a suite or having, a higher class of cabin on other cruise lines. So I really don't know what they talk about when they're talking about a class system on board. I love the promenade deck on board this ship because it is one that wraps around the entire ship, and they have these really thick mattresses on the sun lounges and you can easily fall asleep on them. So that is a really nice place to sit because you are quite low down near the waterline. So you can just lie there and you hear, the waves lapping up against the hull of the ship. It's really lovely. And you can get your steps in. 3 laps equals 0.9 of a mile, if I remember correctly. So you can definitely get some kilometers in or some miles in for your morning fitness. But speaking fitness, the fitness facilities were actually pretty good on this ship. It was a good sized gym for the size of the ship, and I was surprised at how many people were there in the first couple of days. It's really good to see people fit and active. You know, I like to train every day, though I just had a knee operation, so I'm in rehab mode, but it's always a great way to start my day, heading into the gym, and I was pleasantly surprised by the gym there. Just one thing, if you are quite tall, there are 3 treadmills in the center just for you because they have a raised ceiling. If you're on any of the other treadmills, you will probably hit your head on the ceiling. Formality wise, I didn't really see it as being overly formal. There were 2 theme nights on board. There was a black and white night and a masquerade. So I did see some men wearing tuxedos, women wearing nice dresses, but it wasn't over the top. I just wore dresses on a couple of nights. Even in main dining, I did see people wearing t-shirts and shorts. So even though they do say in the cruise planner, also they tell you this before you sail, that after I think 6 p.m. in certain areas you're expected to not wear shorts and t-shirts and gym wear. I didn't really see anyone enforcing it. As far as eating in the buffet, I would just go in my regular day clothes, so whether I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt or I was wearing leggings or jeans or sneakers or whatever it was, I was just eating in those clothes. So that's something that I wouldn't worry about if you are traveling and you don't like to really get dressed up. The high tea or the afternoon tea experience, as they call it, which is at 3 o'clock every day in the Queen's room. They make quite a ceremony of it. All the waiters come out in white and they all come out and walk together. It's really nice. And you get your small sandwiches, and then you have your scones with cream and jam, and they bring around multiple cups of tea and coffee. Now, the jam was actually in those individual sachets, those plastic packets. They were sitting there on the table. And as far as a luxury product, I would think that at the bare minimum it would be in a small glass jar or in a ceramic dish, which incidentally is how they serve it up in the buffet at 3 o'clock. So go figure. Just some things that miss the mark. Twinings tea is the tea on board if you are a tea drinker, but you could not find an English breakfast Twinings tea to save your life. So when we got to Hobart, we got off the ship, bought some Twinings tea and brought it back on. They did have a pub on board and they served food throughout the day. It was included and it was good pub grub. I guess the only thing that was missing, in the pub they did have all these TV monitors, like TV screens. I didn't count them, but there was a lot. But they didn't actually play anything on it. So they just had the Cunard logo sitting there. All in all, I did really enjoy sailing on Cunard's Queen Elizabeth. Anytime I get to try a new cruise line, a cruise ship, I jump at the chance, and I just love being on the water, whatever that happens to be, whatever cabin type it happens to be, wherever it is in the world. The only thing for me was the confusion in what I have seen over the years as far as their marketing messages and their branding. It just really didn't match the onboard product, and I failed to find the correlation between the prices that they charge for cabins and what you get for it. Now, would I sail on Cunard again? I actually would, because they do have 3 other ships in the fleet, so I'm curious to see if the experience that I had was just for this particular ship or whether it's a fleet-wide issue. And I do know that they have some newer ships as well. So I would be curious to try them out for sure, but it would have to be at the right price. Now that I know that it's really not a full-on luxury experience, I need to adjust my pricing expectations. So I would probably want to pay less than what I did for this sailing. If you have cruised on Cunard before, I would love to hear your experience. Drop in the comments below and just help educate me on what I'm missing about the brand. Like I feel like maybe I just got them on the wrong week. I don't know what it was, but I'm sure it is a fabulous product, and I'm sure that there are some really loyal sailors loyal to Cunard, and I just think maybe I'm missing something. So please drop it in the comments below. Tell me, was I on the wrong ship or am I on the wrong cruise brand for me? So if you want to see some more of our Cunard videos, just click here. And as always, thank you so much for watching and happy cruising.